Imagine this. It's the summer of 1944. Hitler's Third Reich, it still has Western Europe locked down tight.
Right. A really vice-like grip.
Exactly. And despite Allied wins elsewhere, there's still no major way onto the continent into Nazi territory. It really felt like a make-or-break moment.
Absolutely. Something massive was needed.
An invasion. Yeah. On a scale nobody had seen before. An incredible gamble. Operation Overlord, or as everyone knows it, D-Day.
That's the one.
So today, that's our mission. We want to unpack the intricate planning, the sheer chaos of the execution, the unbelievable heroism.
And the immediate fallout, too.
Yes. All of June 6th, 1944. We're going deep to figure out why this day wasn't just another battle, why it was such a fundamental turning point for the war, and honestly, for the world.
And when you say unprecedented scale, it's almost impossible to really wrap your head around it.
How big are we talking?
We're talking over 2 million Allied troops gathered in Britain, ready for this.
2 million?
Yeah. And it wasn't just getting people there. Think about the organization, the logistics. Nothing like it had ever been tried before.
2 million troops. That alone just sounds like a logistical migraine waiting to happen. But, what really gets me is the deception, the audacity of it. How do they possibly hide an invasion that big? How do you create an illusion that convincing?
Well, that brings us to Operation Fortitude. This was just a brilliant, multi-layered plan, a whole operation designed specifically to fool German intelligence.
To make them look the wrong way.
Exactly. Make them think the main landing would be at Pas de Calais, which is the narrowest point of the channel, not Normandy.
How'd they pull that off?
The inventiveness was amazing. Inflatable tanks, dummy planes and airfields, fake radio signals. They even created an entire Phantom Army group.
A Phantom Army? Seriously?
Yeah. The first U.S. Army group, FUSAC, supposedly commanded by General George Patton, who the Germans respected, maybe even feared, complete with fake headquarters, fake troop movements. They were selling a ghost.
It's almost funny, isn't it? Picturing German intelligence officers studying photos of rubber tanks.
If the stakes weren't so terrifyingly high, yeah.
But it worked. They bought it. Still, even with that brilliant trickery, the actual decision, the weight on Eisenhower to say go, that must have been immense.
Absolutely crushing. The original date was June 5th.
Right.
But a massive storm hit the channel. They had to postpone. Imagine being Eisenhower. Millions of lives, the fate of Europe, all hanging on your call.
Unbelievable pressure.
Then, on the night of June 5th, the meteorologist saw this tiny, precarious window of better weather, just a sliver.
And he had to decide.
He did, and according to accounts, he just said 2 words. Okay, let's go.
Okay, let's go. Wow, and those 2 words launched everything. An operation that, if it failed...
It could have set the war back years, cost hundreds of thousands more lives. The burden of that choice, it's almost impossible to comprehend.
It really is.
Yeah.
And with that decision, Operation Neptune kicked off, the naval part of the invasion.
An absolute marvel of logistics. Over 5,000 ships setting out.
5,000.
Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, troop transports, thousands of landing craft, all heading across the channel in the dark, before dawn.
Just imagine standing on the English coast that morning, seeing that armada, stretching out as far as you can see.
A staggering sight.
And it wasn't just the sea, was it? The air played a huge part, too.
Oh, definitely. You had 11,000 aircraft involved, bombers hitting targets inland, trying to soften things up.
And the paratroopers?
Right. Gliders and transport planes carrying 23,000 paratroopers into the darkness over Normandy.
Only 3,000. Dropped into enemy territory before the main force even hit the beaches.
It was a coordinated strike. Land, sea, air, all happening at once in those critical pre-dawn hours.
And they weren't just landing anywhere. These beaches had specific assignments, right? 5 sectors.
That's correct. Utah and Omaha for the Americans, Golden Sword for the British, and Juneau for the Canadians.
And I imagine each beach had its own unique set of problems, not just the German guns.
Absolutely. Each one was different. The terrain, the tides, the specific German fortifications they faced, it varied quite a bit.
And for the soldiers in those landing craft, what was that like?
Brutal. From the word go. Many were terribly seasick from the crossing, nervous, obviously, soaked, and then the ramp drops.
And reality hits.
Instantly. Often met with a hail of machine gun fire, mortars, war exploding right in front of them.
And nowhere, it seems, was that reality more brutal than Omaha Beach.
Omaha, yes. That name really became synonymous with, bloodshed and just incredible heroism against the odds.
What made Omaha so much worse? From what you found, was it just better German defenses, or did things go wrong for the Americans tactically?
It was kind of a perfect storm of factors, unfortunately. A critical one was the unexpected presence of the German 352nd Infantry Division.
They weren't supposed to be there.
Intelligence hadn't picked them up, reinforcing that sector. They were well-trained, battle-hardened troops, and they were ready. Add to that, the pre-landing bombing runs. They largely missed the German defenses dug into the bluffs overlooking the beach.
So the defenses were intact.
Pretty much. And then strong currents pushed many of the landing craft off course, away from their designated, potentially less defended sectors.
So when those first waves hit the beach, around 6:30 in the morning, the 1st and 29th Divisions.
It was, as many survivors described it, apocalyptic. Troops jumping off ramps into deep water, weighed down by gear, immediately under fire.
From what? Machine guns?
MG-42s, yeah. Nicknamed Hitler's buzzsaw. Viciously effective. Plus mortars. Artillery raining down from those bluffs.
Nowhere to hide.
Absolutely no cover, just wet sand, these awful steel obstacles the Germans had planted, and bullets everywhere. Whole units were just shredded before they could even get across the beach.
What about tanks? Weren't they supposed to help?
They were, but many of the amphibious tanks, the DD tanks, were launched too far out in rough seas. They just swamped and sank.
Oh.
There's a quote from a Captain Joe Dawson that really captures it. He said, "The bodies were everywhere. It was like a nightmare you couldn't wake up from."
Chilling. Just chilling.
Uh.
And yet, somehow, they did it. They got off the beach. How?
Through sheer grit, honestly. Small groups of soldiers, often their officers were killed or wounded, they just started taking initiative.
On their own?
Yeah. Crawling forward, finding tiny bits of cover, eventually reaching the seawall or the base of the bluffs, then climbing. Climbing under fire, using grenades, Bangalore torpedoes to blow wire, taking out machine gun nests one by one.
Incredible bravery.
Against all odds. By the afternoon, they'd punch small holes in the defenses. But the price, staggering. Around 2,400 casualties on Omaha alone.
The highest of any beach. It's that stark contrast, isn't it? Total chaos, overwhelming odds, met by just individual acts of courage.
Exactly. But thankfully, not all the beaches were like Omaha. Utah Beach, the other American beach, went much better.
Why was that?
Partly down to the airborne drops. The 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions had landed behind the beach defenses during the night. They caused a lot of confusion, knocked out some key German positions, secured causeways leading inland.
So they helped clear the way, essentially.
They did.
Yeah.
And Utah also has that great story about Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr.
Teddy Roosevelt's son.
That's the one. Oldest man in the initial landings, I believe. Insisted on going in with the first wave, despite health problems and being a general officer.
What happened?
Well, their landing craft got pushed south by the current, landing them over a mile off target.
Oh, like Omaha again?
But Roosevelt apparently stayed completely calm, assessed the situation, and famously said something like, "We'll start the war from right here."
Oh, love that.
His leadership on the beach, redirecting troops, getting them organized despite the confusion, it was apparently crucial. Resistance was much lighter there, and they pushed inland several miles by day's end.
Shows how critical leadership is in that kind of chaos. What about the British and Canadian beaches?
Gold Beach, yeah, that's the British 50th Division. They ran into some pretty heavy resistance, too, especially at a fortified village called La Hamel.
But they made progress.
They did. And they achieved something really significant. They captured the town of Bayeux the next day, June 7th.
Bayeux, the one with the tapestry.
That's the one. It became the first major French city liberated in the invasion.
Okay, then Juno Beach, the Canadians.
Juno, right. The 3rd Canadian Infantry Division landed there, and they actually faced the second heaviest resistance after Omaha.
Really? What were the challenges there?
Well, delays caused by offshore reefs and German obstacles meant they landed later than planned as the tide was coming in.
So less beach to work with.
Exactly. Less beach, making them more concentrated targets for the German defenses. The sea was rough, too.
But they pushed through.
They did, with incredible grit. Despite the tough start, the Canadians pushed farther inland on D-Day than any other Allied force. They linked up with the British from Gold Beach and secured crucial roads. Really impressive performance.
And the last one, Sword Beach, also British.
Yes, Sword Beach, the easternmost beach, landed by the British 3rd Division. They faced not only beach defenses, but also a counterattack later in the day.
A counterattack. From who?
Elements of the 21st Panzer Division. It was actually one of the few organized German armored responses on D-Day itself.
So there was heavy fighting there.
Very fierce fighting, especially around the key objective of Caen, which they didn't capture on D-Day, but they held their ground, and they got crucial help from French resistance fighters in the area.
Ah, the resistance. They were active right away.
Oh, yes. Cutting communication lines, providing intelligence. Their help was invaluable, especially around Sword.
You mentioned the airborne divisions earlier helping at Utah. But their overall operation, it was vital, but also incredibly dangerous, wasn't it?
Vital, yes, but extraordinarily risky. We're talking about the U.S. 82nd and 101st and the British 6th Airborne. Their job was to drop behind the lines hours before the landings.
In the dark.
In the dark, often into bad weather, facing heavy anti-aircraft fire or flak. Navigation was extremely difficult.
So things went wrong.
Lots of things went wrong. The drops were massively scattered. Paratroopers landed miles from their intended drop zones. Some landed right on top of German positions.
I read some landed in flooded areas.
Yes, the Germans had deliberately flooded low-lying areas behind Utah Beach. Tragically, some paratroopers, weighed down with maybe 80 or 100 pounds of gear, landed in these marshes and drowned before they could even get free.
Just awful. Pure chaos.
It really was chaos for many, landing alone, in the dark, in enemy territory, completely unsure where they were or where the enemy was.
And yet, they still managed to achieve key objectives. Despite all that.
Amazingly, yes, despite the chaos and the losses. For example, the British 6th Airborne pulled off a stunning glider assault to capture two crucial bridges over the Ornon River and Canyon Canal.
Pegasus Bridge.
That's the one. Capturing Pegasus Bridge intact was vital. It prevented German tanks from rushing towards Sword Beach, an incredible feat of arms.
And the Americans.
The American paratroopers, despite being scattered, managed to secure key crossroads, bridges, and those causeways leading off Utah Beach. They sowed confusion among the Germans, ambushed reinforcements.
So even small groups made a difference.
Absolutely. There are incredible stories of small, isolated groups of paratroopers holding out against overwhelming odds for days, like the defense of the La Fière Bridge near Saint-Mère-Église. A small group held off repeated German counterattacks, including tanks, ensuring that route stayed open for reinforcements coming from Utah. Just raw courage.
It's fascinating how, despite all this Allied effort, the German high command seemed so unprepared, or maybe unprepared for where it happened.
That's a key point. They were unprepared for the location and the scale. Hitler's much talked about Atlantic Wall. Well, it was formidable in places, but it wasn't finished. It was inconsistent. Manning was often subpar in Normandy compared to Pas-de-Calais.
Because they were still fixated on Pas-de-Calais, even as the ships were crossing the channel.
Yes. That deception, Operation Fortitude, had worked brilliantly. Hitler, his top generals, they were convinced Normandy was a feint, that the real invasion, the main one, was still coming at Calais.
But surely someone must have realized the scale of the Normandy landings.
Eventually, yes. But the belief in the Calais deception was so strong it caused critical delays. Plus, the command structure was a bit messy.
How so?
While several key commanders weren't even at their posts on June 6th, and Hitler himself kept personal control over the Panzer divisions, the main armored reserve.
And he wouldn't release them.
Not without his direct order. And he famously slept late that morning and refused to believe it was the main invasion until the afternoon. By the time those panzers were released, it was too late to throw the Allies back into the sea. That delay was absolutely crucial.
And Rommel. Field Marshal Rommel, the Desert Fox, he was in charge of defending that coast, wasn't he?
He was. But, incredibly, he was back in Germany on June 6th.
Why?
It was his wife's birthday. He'd gone home to give her a present, assuming the invasion wouldn't happen in the bad weather.
Wow. Talk about bad timing.
It was critical. Rommel had actually argued passionately that the invasion had to be defeated right on the beaches. He knew that Allied air power would make it almost impossible to move reserves once the Allies got ashore.
But his warnings were ignored.
Largely, yes. Hitler and the High Command were still focused on Calais. Rommel understood the danger in Normandy, but he wasn't there to direct the immediate counterattack. By the time he rushed back, the Allies had already established their beachheads.
Do you think, if Rommel had been there, could he have stopped it? Changed the outcome of D-Day itself?
That's a huge what if. His presence certainly would have made the German response faster, probably better coordinated, maybe even more brutal on the beaches. He might have slowed the Allies down significantly.
But stopped them completely?
Probably not. The sheer weight of Allied numbers, the air supremacy, the naval bombardment, it was likely too much. But Rommel being there could have made the initial breakout from the beaches even bloodier and slower. His absence was definitely a stroke of luck for the Allies.
So the Allies secure the beaches, but the fight's far from over. Now they had to push inland, right, into Normandy itself.
Exactly, and that's where they ran into a whole new kind of hell. The bocage.
The bocage, what's that?
It's the Norman countryside. It's not open fields, like you might imagine. It's a landscape of small fields, sunken lanes, all divided by these incredibly thick, ancient hedgerows.
Hedgerows, like garden hedges.
Oh, much, much bigger. Think dense walls of earth, stone, and tangled vegetation, sometimes 10, 15 feet high, almost impenetrable.
And that was a problem.
A nightmare. It turned Normandy into a perfect defensive landscape for the Germans. Each hedgerow became a natural fortress.
How so?
German snipers, machine gun teams, anti-tank guns could hide in them completely concealed. They'd let Allied troops advance into a field, then open up with devastating crossfire from multiple hedgerows, ambush territory.
So progress must have been incredibly slow.
Agonizingly slow.
Yeah.
Brutal. It became known as the hedgerow fighting, house to house, field by field combat, advancing maybe a few hundred yards a day at terrible cost.
What about tanks? Couldn't they just push through?
They struggled badly. The hedgerows were too thick for standard tanks to break through easily. They'd get channeled onto the narrow roads where they were easy targets for German Panzerfausts, those shoulder-fired anti-tank rockets or the feared 88mm guns hidden in the next hedgerow line.
So the Allies were bogged down. This wasn't the rapid advance they'd hoped for after the landings.
Not at all. Key inland battles, like taking the town of Carentan to link up Utah and Omaha beaches, that took the 101st Airborne a week of savage fighting.
And Cayenne, the city near Sword Beach.
Cayenne was supposed to be taken on D-Day itself by the British. It ended up taking over a month of grinding, attritional warfare before it finally fell in mid-July. Weeks and weeks of brutal combat.
So how did the Allies adapt? They couldn't just keep throwing men against these hedgerows, could they?
No, they had to innovate, and they did. American ingenuity came up with something called the rhino. Yeah. Sergeant Curtis Cullen actually gets a lot of credit. They realized they could weld sharp steel teeth, often made from salvaged German beach obstacles, onto the front of Sherman tanks.
What did that do?
It allowed the tanks to literally rip through the base of the hedgerows, creating gaps for infantry and other tanks to follow. It was a game changer in the bocage.
Clever.
Yeah.
Any other adaptations?
They also relied much more heavily on close air support. Fighter bombers, like the P-47 Thunderbolt, became crucial for blasting German strongpoints hidden in the hedgerows before the infantry went in. And artillery, massive amounts of artillery.
While all this military action is happening,
Yeah.
we have to remember the civilians caught in the middle. Normandy wasn't empty land.
Absolutely not. And the cost for them was immense. Allied bombing, especially the heavy bombing, needed to try and break German resistance in towns like Cayenne or Saint-Lô later on. It was devastating.
Whole cities destroyed.
Virtually flattened in some cases. Thousands of French civilians were killed in the crossfire or by Allied bombs during the Normandy campaign. Thousands more lost their homes, everything they had. It's a part of the liberation story that's often overlooked.
But despite that suffering, many French civilians actively helped the Allies, didn't they? The resistance.
Yes, despite the immense personal risk, the FFI, the Forces Françaises de l'Intérieur, played a crucial role, providing intelligence on German positions, guiding Allied units, sheltering downed airmen.
Sabotage, too.
Definitely. Sabotaging railway lines to slow German reinforcements, cutting telephone wires, ambushing German patrols. People like Marie-Madeleine Fourcade coordinated huge espionage networks, getting vital information out. Their bravery was extraordinary.
But that bravery came at a terrible price if they were caught.
A horrific price. The Nazi response to resistance activity or even suspected activity was brutal. The massacre at Oradour-sur-Glane is perhaps the most infamous example.
What happened?
In a reprisal action, an SS unit surrounded the village, separated the men from the women and children. They shot the men, then locked the women and children in the church and set it on fire. 642 innocent civilians murdered in a single day.
Unspeakable.
It underscores the sheer evil they were fighting against and the risks the resistance took.
So, despite the hedgerows, despite the fierce German defense, the Allies kept pushing. The buildup continued.
Unstoppably. By the end of June, just about 3 weeks after D-Day, the numbers are staggering. Nearly 850,000 troops ashore.
850,000.
Around 150,000 vehicles, tanks, trucks, jeeps, and over 500,000 tons of supplies landed. The logistical pipeline was flowing.
That sheer weight of men and material. The Germans couldn't match that, could they? Especially fighting on the Eastern Front, too.
They couldn't. D-Day and the subsequent Battle of Normandy truly was the turning point in the West. It sealed Germany's fate. It opened that vital second front Stalin had been demanding for so long.
Forcing Hitler to fight a major war on two fronts.
A war he could not win. From Normandy, the path led eventually to the liberation of Paris in August 44, and then the push towards Germany itself.
But we have to keep coming back to the cost. Over 10,000 Allied casualties on June 6th alone.
10,000 killed, wounded, or missing on that single day. And tens of thousands more would fall in the brutal weeks of fighting that followed in Normandy.
An immense sacrifice.
It really was, but it was that sacrifice that, forged the path to liberation, to the end of Nazi tyranny in Europe. It showed what could be achieved, that even the most entrenched evil could be overcome through incredible courage, meticulous planning, massive coordination, and sheer determination.
And today, when you visit those Normandy beaches, they're quiet now, peaceful.
They are, watched over by the cemeteries, the memorials, and by the memory, hopefully, of what happened there. The silence really does speak volumes after knowing the noise and fury of that day.
Thinking about D-Day, it really is more than just a date in history, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's this profound example of human endeavor on a massive scale. You look at that incredible gamble, that coordinated effort, but also the chaos, the individual heroism, the terrible cost.
Makes you wonder.
It does. How does that single day, that confluence of planning, bravery, sacrifice, and just pure chance, how does that shape how we see human ingenuity, our resilience when facing seemingly impossible odds?
What lessons are still there for us?
Exactly. What does D-Day continue to teach us about leadership, about the power and danger of deception, about the true human cost of conflict? That longest day, its echoes are still felt, aren't they? It leaves you thinking about what we're capable of, for better and for worse, when the stakes are highest. Something to really reflect on.